There's a time to learn and a time to schmooze. So I wanted to thank Linda and Gershon Hepner, who are sponsoring the Shiur today in honor of the yahrzeit of Linda's mother, Ada Rohr, Ada Bat Yisrael Noah, Zichrono Livracha, and also in honor of the yahrzeit of Gershon's mother, Margot Hepner, Saradina Bat Gershon, Zichrono Livracha. May our learning together, our being inspired together, our connecting with one another, may it be a zechut for their neshamot. Thank you so much, Linda and Gershon, for sponsoring this year. Okay, this week's Parsha is Parshat Tavo, where Moshe Rabbeinu, we're getting closer to the end of the Torah, and Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the Jewish people about entering the land. And it says, V'haya ki tavo el haaretz, asher Hashem Elokecha noten lecha nachala, v'yirishta v'yashavta ba. That when you enter the land that Hashem gives you as an inheritance, and you possess it and you dwell in it, so the Parsha proceeds to speak about the mitzvah of the Bikurim. And the mitzvah of the Bikurim is when the farmer brings the first fruits to Yerushalayim. And I just put the psukim on the screen, where it says V'haya kisavo el haaretz. And Rashi has an interesting comment here. V'haya kisavo magid shelo nischayavu b'bikurim ad shekavshu et haaretz v'chalkua. That a farmer is only obligated to bring first fruits to the Beis Hamikdash, Yerushalayim, only after the land is conquered and after the land is divided. And we know that it took 7 years for the Jewish people to conquer the land. And then it took another 7 years with all the zoning permits and the zoning laws and the red tape and everything. We don't know exactly what went into it, but we know that it took 7 years to divide the land among the different tribes. And Rashi tells us that you're only obligated to bring Bikurim after you've completely entered the land. It's not just when you've put a foot into the land. It's not just when some tribes have gone into the land, but it has to be where everyone has entered, where you've conquered, and where you've divided. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe has an interesting comment on this, where he quotes the Gemara, where the Gemara says that a partial entry is not considered entry. Right? If a person just puts his arm into a room, that's not considered entry into the room. And when the Jewish people, if they would partially come into Eretz Yisrael, that's not considered kisavo ela aretz. And Lubavitcher Rebbe wanted to suggest that it teaches us a powerful, powerful lesson in our daily lives, that we should enter ourselves totally and wholeheartedly into everything that we do. Whatever we become immersed in, whatever we think is important, whatever we've decided to get involved in, right? We have to engage in it wholeheartedly, not in a half-baked way, because if it's important, we should engage in something with the fullness of our being. Rashi teaches us over here that ki tavo, to come into Eretz Yisrael, means it has to be completely immersed and having entered into the land of Israel. It's interesting on this topic that there's only a few different mitzvot that you apply, that you have your full being involved in. I mean, we could say prayer, right? Prayer, you move around your body a little bit, based on the pasuk Kol Asmosai Tomarna. All my bones should express the praises of Hashem. We also move around our body because we want to increase our level of intensity in prayer. But one of the reasons why we do that is we get our whole body involved. It's a full body experience of prayer. But there's a few other mitzvot for which we engage and we involve our whole body. Can anyone think of them? One of them is the mitzvah of sukkah, that's right. Another one is the mitzvah of mikvah. And another mitzvah that we use our whole body for is the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, of living in the land of Israel. And Rabbi Gedalia Shiur has a very nice principle where he says that every mitzvah has a unique characteristic that teaches us about all mitzvot. So, for example, the mitzvah of Daled Minim, of the lulav and etrog, right? The pasuk says, "Pri eitz hadar," you should have a beautiful etrog. So that's specifically taught to us by lulav and etrog, but it's something that we apply in our mitzvah observance with all the mitzvot, right? We try to do our mitzvot not just perfunctorily, not just to check off the box, but we try to do it in a beautiful fashion, in an aesthetically pleasing fashion. So we learn it from lulav and etrog, but we apply it to all the mitzvot. And of course, another pasuk that teaches us that is Zeh Keli V'Andeyu. This is my God, and I will beautify him. So another mitzvah is a matzah, right? You have to bake the matzahs very, very quickly. You have to have vigilance and enthusiasm when you bake the matzahs. So Rav Shiur in the Or Gedalia says, so this is a unique characteristic of matzah, but it's something that we apply to our mitzvah observance across the board, right? With all the mitzvahs, we should be vigilant and have passion and enthusiasm. All right, so from etrog, we learn beauty. From matzah, we learn enthusiasm and vigilance. And maybe from the mitzvah of kisavo, right, the mitzvah of entering the land of Israel, that you're supposed to enter with your complete body. It only applies after the Jewish people have entered and conquered and divided the land, which took 14 years. And so maybe from the mitzvah of entering Israel, and also the mitzvah of sukkah and mikvah, but we'll talk about just from the perspective of our parsha, that from entering Israel, we learn that for all the mitzvot, in all our relationships and everything we do, it shouldn't be half-baked. It shouldn't be done in a perfunctory way. It shouldn't be done going through the motions. But we should engage with the fullness of our being and with the complete intention and focus of our minds as well should be engaged in the mitzvah. There's a cute story that's told about a barchen. You know, many of the Hasidic weddings, and we had it, I believe, at our wedding, right? You have a barchen at the end. And he's a comedian who, with a good nature, good spirit, he, makes fun of the chassan and kala and the families, but all in a good, loving spirit. And it's done towards the end of the wedding. Who here has either had a barchen at their wedding or maybe at a child's wedding? You can raise your hand if you can raise your hand. Okay, good. All right, we got a couple hands raised. That's good. So it once happened that a barchen was at a wedding with the family, and also the Hasidic Rebbe was there as well. And the barchen did an impersonation of the Rebbe davening. So he was chuckling, and he was chuckling, and he was doing this impersonation of the Rebbe davening. And out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that the Rebbe seemed to be quite agitated. Was almost crying. And so he cut his impersonation short. He cut his routine short. And right afterwards, he rushed over to the Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, I apologize for doing that impersonation of you because it probably was not respectful. And I see that it seemed like you were upset about it. You were bothered by it. And the Rebbe said, no, I wasn't bothered and I wasn't upset at it by it at all. So the barchen, the comedian, said, but Rebbe, it looked like you were like almost crying, looked like you were agitated. So the Rebbe said to him, no, you did an excellent impersonation. And I was not upset that you did the imitation of me. But the reason why I was upset and why I was agitated is because when I saw you doing an impersonation of me, I thought to myself that maybe when I daven, I'm really just doing an impersonation of myself. That sometimes when we go about doing our mitzvot, we're kind of just going through the motions. We're imitating ourselves, right? We daven mincha, we daven shacharis, and we daven in the same way we daven the previous day. And so the Rebbe, that's what the Hasidic Rebbe said. And so what we learned from the Lubavitch Rebbe teaches us from the beginning of our Parsha is that Tavo means you have to completely enter the land and you should be completely engaged sincerely in a fresh way, in a new way, with the mitzvos that we do. I'm reminded of a great story of the Chichever Rebbe. The Chichever Rebbe, I'm not quoting the story just because I enjoy saying Chichever, but it was the Chichever Rebbe who it once happened that somebody came to the Chichever and he said, my son is being drafted into the Russian army. And I'm nervous that if he goes into the army, that he's going to lose his observance. He's not going to keep kosher. He's not going to keep Shabbos, and he's going he's gonna lose his level of observance. Rebbe, can you give me a blessing that my son should evade the draft of the Russian army? And we're talking now 150 years ago. And the Chichev Rebbe looked at him, and have you heard the story? Okay. So he looked at him closely, and he said, "Let me think about it. Come back tomorrow." All right. The man was didn't understand why the Rebbe was asking him to come back the next day, but the man came back the next day and said, "Rebbe, do you have an answer for me? Can you give me a blessing? Can you give me a blessing that my son should evade the draft? I don't want him to go into the army. I want your blessing. I want your approval, your endorsement." And the Rebbe looked at him and said, "Come back tomorrow." And the man came again back the next day, and he said, "Okay, do you have an answer for me?" And the rabbi said, "Tell me the story again. Tell me the story again." And the man said, I already told you the situation yesterday and the day before. I have to tell it again. The rabbi said, "Yeah, just tell it again." And again, the man said, "I'm really nervous. I'm really concerned that my son is being drafted into the Russian army, etc., etc." So the Rebbe looked at him closely, and he said, "My blessing to you is that your son should serve his country with pride and with honor. And my hope is that when he serves in the Russian army, he should maintain his commitment to tradition as well, to Jewish tradition, to halacha as well." The man was kind of like annoyed, that wasn't the answer that he wanted, and he was a little bit disgusted, and he rushed out. The students who were around at that time said to the Rebbe, said to the Chichev Rebbe, "I don't understand. We've had many conversations with you about this issue. Usually you tell us that under all circumstances we should try to avoid serving in the Russian army. Why was it that you told that parent that his son should go serve with honor the country, the motherland?" And so the Chichev Rebbe said, "The reason is because I suspect, and I'm convinced that that person was really a KGB agent, was a Russian spy. And he was trying to trap me and catch me in, betraying the country." And they said, "Wait, why do you think that? How did you come to that conclusion?" And the Chichev Rebbe said, "I'll tell you why. Because each time he told the story about his son, he told it in the same tone and the same decibel level. If he really cared about his son, and if it was a real situation, each time he would have come to me, he would have said it with a little bit more desperation, a little bit more passion. And because he said it the same way each time, I knew he was a fake. I knew he was a fraud." Wow. So the Chichever teaches all of us that if we just go through the motions with the mitzvot, if we just kind of impersonate and imitate ourselves when we daven, when we say brachot, when we even do mitzvahs ben adam lechavero, I guess sometimes also we're going through the motions. If each time we do it, it's with the same character, with the same level of mediocre passion, so then in a certain sense we're not being sincere. If we really care about the mitzvot, and if we really recognize that it's represents our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and if we're really passionate about it, then each time we daven, it should be with a little bit more passion, with a little bit more desperation. Certainly each time we daven on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur, each tefillah should not be the same. If it's really that we believe that things are hanging in the balance for us and our families, and if we really care about the mitzvahs, which I know we all do, so then we should really increase our level of passion each and every tefillah, each and every time. Certainly each and every tefillah of Yom Kippur, and each and every time we do a mitzvah should be with a fresh and innovative way. The first section of the Parsha, and thank you, Esther, glad you liked the Chichever joke. So let's go back. The first section of the Parsha speaks about the mitzvah of Bikurim, as we already said. And the Parsha tells us, let's see, what does it tell us? It says, V'lakachta mereshit kol pri adama, you should take the first fruits. V'samta batena, you should place it in a basket. V'halachta el hamakom, and you should go to the place that Hashem will choose to place His divine presence. Ubas el HaKohen, you should come to the Kohen. Asher yeh bayamim hahem, that is a Kohen at that period of time. Take a look at Rashi. Asher yeh bayamim hahem, ein lecha el HaKohen shebiyamecha. You have to respect the Kohen who's in your generation. You have to respect the rabbis of your generation. Yeah, the Kohen might not be on the same level as the previous Kohanim. The judges might not be on the level of the judges of prior generations. The rabbis might not be on a different level, but these are your rabbis, these are your Kohanim, and you got to make the best of it. And that's, I guess, one thing that we learned from the situation of COVID, right? Making the best of the situation. So, ubasa la Kohen asher yeh bayamim hahem, right? You should go to the Kohen during those days. I mean, which other Kohen could you go to, if not the Kohen who's presiding over those days? But Rashi says, it teaches us that you have to respect the leaders of your generation, obviously to a point. I mean, obviously, if they don't deserve respect, and if they're corrupt or incompetent, so then that's a different story. But assuming they have a basic level of competence and they're putting in their dedication to the people, so then you have to give them respect. V'amarta elav, and so you come with the basket, you approach the Kohen, and you say v'amarta elav, and you say higadati hayom la'Hashem Elokecha. I say today, ki bati ala aretz, asher nishba Hashem lavotenu latet lanu, that I have come to the land which Hashem has sworn to give to our forefathers, foremothers, and all of us. Now, like he's in the land of Israel. Why does he have to say ki bati ala aretz, that I've come to tell you that I'm appreciating the fact that I've come to the land? The answer is that sometimes we have to express appreciation even over those things that we think are obvious. Sometimes we don't say things to our loved ones because, we assume that they know that we're thankful for this or that. You see from here that even for those things that are obvious, for those things that are small, you have to make sure to take the time to express appreciation for it, because otherwise then you come to take it for granted, and then before you know it, the person might resent you for not expressing appreciation. The Kohen should take the basket from your hand and place it in front of the altar. Okay, and so the Mishnayot teach us that when a farmer would bring the Bikurim, there was great celebration at that time. It was accompanied by flutes, by dancing, by drums, by singing, and there was a great amount of excitement surrounding the first fruits that were brought to the Beis Hamikdash. How much were you required to give to be considered first fruits? Even a small amount is sufficient for Bikurim. Let's contrast Bikurim, the first fruits, with another mitzvah that's discussed in our Parsha. And the other mitzvah that's discussed in our Parsha is the Maser. Ki techalel aser et kol maser tuatcha. That every single year you would have to bring 2% to the Kohen, and 10% you would give to the Levi, and then the other 10% you would either bring to Yerushalayim or you would give to the poor. So when it came to the Maser, so there's no celebration, there's no pomp and circumstance, there's no dancing, there's no singing. And yet, it's a much greater amount than the Bikurim. With the Bikurim was a small amount that you could fulfill the mitzvah of first fruits with a small amount. And here there's such great celebration by the first fruits. And the man makes this grand declaration when he comes to the Beis Hamikdash. And there's singing and there's dancing and there's excitement. With regards to the Maser, why is there no dancing and celebration if it's an even greater amount? It was like 20% that you had to give for Maser. Right? You had to give 10% to the Levi, 10% to bring to Yerushalayim or give to the poor. So it was like 20% of your crop. What's the difference between Maser and Bikurim?
Okay, maybe.
Yes, Ayala.
Maybe. The bikurim were the first fruits that grew in a person's vineyard or whatever. And that's something you've put in so much labor into it and you've nurtured it. And it's something that you would want to taste yourself first, but you're taking it and bringing it to Hashem. The Maser was some overall what you have. So maybe that's a reason.
Beautiful idea, Yala. That Maser, you take the 10%, or we said there's a couple different obligations, but we'll call it 10% is Maser. You take the 10% from the crop that has already been harvested. I know how much I have, and now I'm taking 10% from that, and I'm left with 90%. And even if I give 2% to the Kohen and 10% to Levi and 10% to Yerushalayim, I'm left with something close to 80%. But with Bikurim, that's the first fruits. And it's something very exciting. And I don't know yet how much my crop is going to yield. I don't know how much I'm going to have, if it's going to be a successful year altogether. But I take that first fruit and I wrap a string around it and I designate it as first fruits to be brought to Hashem. And so maybe the reason why there's so much celebration around the Bikurim is because that represents our faith and optimism in the future. Even though we don't know what's going to be. And our crop has not yet grown. And we don't know what's going to be in the upcoming period of time in 2020. But Bikurim represents this concept of hope, faith, and optimism in the future. Certainly faith that Hashem gave us His first fruit, and that we're faithful that there's going to be success in the future. A related way to put this is that Maser is really about the past. And Bikurim is more about the future. And as a Jew, we care about both. We care about the past, and we care about the future in informing the present. A Jew has to live with two einayim, right? With two eyes. Ayin. One ayin is for avar, is past, and one ayin is for atid, which is future. When Yosef is in two einayim, right? Two einayim. One ayin is for avar, is the past, and one ayin is atid, the future. I once heard from a psychologist, Ilan Javanfard. He gave a talk to young professionals. He said that, of course, a person has to live in the moment and be present in the moment. Each of you is very present in this shiur. You're totally focused. You are so involved. You're so enjoying it. You don't even realize how much you're enjoying it, right? Because we have to be 70%, Ilan said. 70% in the present, 15% in the past, and 15% in the future. So I'm not saying that we should live in the past, and I'm not saying that we should live in the future. Of course, the person has to be primarily in the present. But as you're engaged in the present, you always have to incorporate the ayin of the past and the ayin of the future. Maser represents our appreciation of the past. We've received a crop, and now we have to express appreciation and recognize that Hashem enabled us to have the success. And now we have to, recognizing that it all comes from Hashem, we have to share from our successes with others, with the Kohen, with the Levi, and with the poor. And Bikurim represents our excitement and faith and optimism in what the future holds in store for us. It's the first fruits of what's about to come ahead. When Yosef is in Mitzrayim and he's tempted by Mrs. Potiphar, and every single day she's tempting him and he's far away from home, which makes it very, very difficult for him to stay committed to his values, to his traditions. And the Medrash says that what was it that inspired Yosef to make the right decision? What gave him the power to resist the advances of Mrs. Potiphar, which would have been, of course, it was adultery, and it would have been, of course, a violation of responsibility to his master Potiphar.
He
So
remembered his father.
It was wrong on multiple levels, of course. But what gave him that ability to refrain?
He remembered his father.
Very good, Esther. Very good. And as you observed the yard site for your father, and as Linda and Gershon observing yard sites today, so or around this time, so Yaakov saw an image of his father in the window. He saw the mustyukno shel aviv. He saw the image of his father in the window. But there's another opinion in the Medrash that Yosef also, he saw the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, and he saw that his name was slowly disappearing from the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. Like it is in the movie Back to the Future, right, where he sees the image beginning to disappear from the picture. So, what's his name? Michael J. Fox. So Michael J. Fox helped us understand that Medrash, where it says by Yosef, he saw the image of his father in the window, but he also saw the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. What's the significance of those two ideas of the Medrash? One is that he remembered his past, his father, and his values. And number two, he thought about the future and the implications of his actions today and what impact they might have on the future. A Jew has two ayins, two eyes. One is for Avar and one is for Asid. Maser is about the past, and Bikurim, right? Maser represents a beautiful, rich past that has created the present moment, and Bikurim represents our faith in Hashem, which is worth deserving of celebration, that you have faith in Hashem, but also the excitement of what the future holds in store and what we need to do today to bring about that future. Let me see what we have in the chat box over here. Any questions?
Comment.
Okay, comments. Okay, good. Rifki got it. Saw his father's face before him, his past, who he was, and where he came from. That's right, past and future. Very good.
Okay, so.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
But also, basically, when we talk about Bikurim, you're talking about one of the three regalim, because Bikurim you only bring on Shavuot to the Kohen. So therefore, it was a very important, thing to bring, because it has to do with, the holiday of Shavuot, which is one of the three important holidays of the year.
Very good. Very good. You're absolutely right. That it's the Bikurim were typically bought on Shavuot, although you had a few months to bring it, and it's connected to one of the important regalim. That's a good point. Any other? Yeah, Julie, are you trying to ask something? Julie, go ahead. No, okay. Now, if we go back to when the farmer comes to Yerushalayim, he makes a declaration. Does anyone know the declaration that the farmer recites?
Arami Oved Avi.
Very good, Ron. Very good.
Has to do with the Haggadah too.
Very good. So it says, Arami Oved Avi, right? That my father was a wandering Aramean. Vayered Mitzrayim, and he went down to Egypt, and he dwelled there, and he became prosperous, or he became numerous there. Vayareo atanu hamitzrim, the Egyptians afflicted us. Vanitzak al Hashem Elokei avotenu, we cried out to Hashem. Vayotzienu Hashem mitzrayim, and Hashem listened to our cries. He answered our prayers, and he redeemed us from Egypt. Vavienu el hamakom hazeh v'yiten lanu al eretz hazot eretz zavat chalav u'dvash. So Ron is exactly right that these are the 4 psukim that are the centerpiece of the Magid on Pesach. It's interesting that on Pesach night, when we relate the story of the Exodus, we don't expound upon and elaborate the psukim that appear in Parshat Bo, which is when the story happens, but we actually extrapolate, we take these psukim of the declaration of the farmer, and we analyze each word. Right, V'yer Mitzrayim, and we speak about it, and we learn about it, and we quote a teaching of Chazal about this word, of that word, and we study these 4 psukim. these 4 psukim are parallel in a certain sense to the 4 expressions of redemption. V'hotzeti, v'hitzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lakachti. As all of you know, the number 4, right? The number 4 has great significance at the Seder. Why is that? So why do we take from the farmer's declaration and not from the psukim that appear in Parshat Bo? And the answer is because it's very easy to express appreciation for something right when it happened, but to recognize years later, when you're living in Israel, to be able to look back at history and recognize the different steps that brought you to that spot, that shows a greater level of appreciation. And at the Seder, right, we ourselves personally, physically didn't go out of Mitzrayim, but on multiple levels, right, spiritually, existentially, right, we nationally, we do view it as if we went out of Mitzrayim and we're trying to recreate that experience. And so we draw from the farmer who's years later living in the land of Israel, who's able to have that broadness of perspective to appreciate the fact that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim so many years earlier. And it's that broadness of perspective that we try to recreate at the Pesach Seder. And that's right. As Rivki says, Hakaras HaTov. The Haggadah is very much about Hakaras HaTov, expressing appreciation. That's why we have Dayenu, right? The 15 steps of Dayenu. And Magid is a lot about Hakarat HaTov. And as Jews, right, part of the essence of being Jewish is Hakarat HaTov, is appreciation. And so maybe that's why we take the farmer's declaration, and the farmer has to have that broadness of perspective, right? Because that's what it means to have Hakaras HaTov. It's not just for what just happened, but it's also Hakaras HaTov for things that happened, years earlier and generations earlier. It also represents the idea that we don't fully understand an experience sometimes, right? Until many years later. Sometimes going through an experience, we don't fully understand why it's happening, and it seems like it's something that's a challenge, something that's difficult. But then, at a later point in time, now, as a farmer living in the land of Israel, now we kind of understand the trajectory of history. It's a beautiful medrash where it says that when Moshe comes to Yitro, when Moshe comes to the daughters of Yitro, right, he runs away from Egypt, and he comes to the well, and he sees the shepherds that are bullying the daughters of Yitro. And Moshe springs into action, and he saves the day. When the daughters, and maybe, one of the reasons that Moshe got involved, of course, the real reason he got involved is because a Jew has to get involved and fight injustice and get involved for good causes, even if it's not relating to the Jewish people. Right? We have to serve as a light unto the nations. And so, yes, we have to fight anti-Semitism. And yes, we have to promote Achdus among the Jewish people, but also we have to get involved to fight injustice and to repair the world. And so when the daughters of Yitro rush to their father, they say, Ish Mitzri Hitzilanu. An Egyptian man has saved us. Wait a second. Was Moshe really an Egyptian? Was Moshe really an Egyptian? So one possibility is that they thought he was an Egyptian. The other answer is that he was dressed as an Egyptian.
Exactly.
However, the Medrash has a beautiful pshat. The Medrash says that it was the Mitzri that was beating upon the Jew, which was a terrible challenge. Obviously, the persecution and the slavery were, horrific circumstances for the Jewish people. And it was that Mitzri that was beating upon the Jew that Moshe killed that ended up saving the daughters of Yitro. Because one thing led to the other. Because the Egyptian was beating upon the Jew, which was horrible, and he had to be brought to justice, and he deserved to be killed, right? Because the Egyptian wanted to kill the Jew, but because of that Egyptian that was beating upon the Jew, that led to Moshe doing the right thing. That led to the next day when Moshe was out with 2 Jews and they were fighting with one another, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, Why are you fighting? Why aren't you getting along? Jews have to get along with one another because we're part of an extended family. And they said, what, you're going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? And so the word started spreading. And because of that, Moshe Rabbeinu had to flee Egypt. And obviously, that was a very, very, must have been a very difficult, challenging time for Moshe Rabbeinu to, sounds like, to be ratted out by his brethren and now have to flee his country and to go to the land of Midian. So Ish Mitzri Hitzilanu. And the Medrash says, it's a little bit like if a person is bitten by a scorpion, says the Medrash. A scorpion, bites a person on his foot. And what do? You rush over to the water. You rush over to the water of the ocean to cool off to soothe the pain from the sting of the scorpion. And you come to the water and you see, and there's a child drowning, and you save the child. So the scorpion, in a certain sense, saved the child. The Medrash says, similarly, the Ish Mitzri Hitzilanu, the Egyptian man saved us. It was the Egyptian man, yes, Moshe looked like an Egyptian, but maybe it's alluding to the Egyptian who was beating upon the Jew, where one thing led to the other thing, which led to the other thing, which led to Moshe saving the daughters of Yitro. Of course, we know that Moshe ended up getting married to one of those daughters, namely Tzipporah. And of course, I guess, Gamzu Latova, that good things coming out of that. And I think it's this idea is really reflected in the farmer's declaration. The farmer, when he comes to the Beit HaMikdash, he doesn't just thank Hashem for his successful crop of that year, but he tries to go back, to previous years, to previous generations. He goes back even centuries to when we were when my great grandfather was experiencing troubles and challenges, and the Jewish people were persecuted in the land of Egypt, and one thing led to the other. But here I'm in Israel. And so it's that broadness of spirit and of, the broadness of perspective. It's the ability to appreciate things that happened many, many years ago. But what I'm trying to suggest is maybe it's the lesson of that recognizing that when you're going through something, you don't necessarily understand it. Sometimes one thing leads to another thing, that ultimately becomes a salvation for you. And it's at that point we recognize, okay, Gamzu Latova, that it was indeed for the best. We believe that this is for the best, that when there's a challenge that happens, it's for the best. We believe that, and we hope and pray that we'll be able to appreciate that. We'll be able to say, for any challenge that comes our way, to say, okay, we'll hopefully be able to reach that point. We'll be able to be like the farmer coming to the Beis HaMikdash to say, okay, now I know it was for the best. It was difficult, it was challenging, but I got through it. I became stronger. It brought my family closer together. And there was a reason for it. I still maybe don't fully understand why I had to go through it that way, but the scorpion bit my foot, which caused me to go here, which caused me to save the child. And the Mitzri was beating upon the Jew, which caused Moshe to get involved with the two Jews. And then Moshe Rabbeinu ran away, and it ended up saving the women, the daughters of Yitro. And so too, one thing led to the other. And that's the story of life. And we have faith that there's a purpose to the trajectory, and that we can appreciate. And we appreciate, hopefully, the fact that things happen for a reason, and that ultimately it is to our benefit.
Question.
Yeah, Yala.
The only thing is that the daughters of Yitro didn't really, this is in retrospect and from the outside, but the daughters of Yitro didn't know that he killed the Mitzri and then wanted to save the Jew, and therefore, etc., etc. So it makes more sense that he was dressed like an Egyptian. And probably there were no Jews outside of Egypt. So maybe that was a close country to Midian, and therefore it made sense.
Look, there's no question about it that the basic pshat is that he was dressed as an Egyptian, and in a certain sense he was, an Egyptian, a Jewish Egyptian.
Right.
But on a different level, Ayala, we're explaining on a deeper level, maybe what it's hinted to. Sometimes you prophesy something without knowing what you're prophesying, and so that's Ish Mitzri, that on some level they might not have fully understood what they were saying, but the Ish Mitzri was the one who saved them. Of course they were not aware, in the simple pshat of the story, they were not aware of that Ish Mitzri, but nevertheless it's a good explanation. Yes, Miriam, go ahead. Try to unmute yourself now.
She can't hear.
Then Moses married the daughter of Achon.
Of Yitro, that's right. He married the daughter of Yitro, that's right.
And is there any place that I have missed in all these many decades that says there was conversion somewhere?
Well, this is
I
before
know, of course, with Ruth, we understand that she said, Amech Ameh, and, where you will go, I will go, etc. For my people, that was the conversion, or declaration, to stand there and declare it. Therefore, became a Jew. Now here, is there any talk or thought or even idea that marrying a Jew, she should take anything upon herself as a Jew?
No,
that was before the time the Torah was given.
Right.
So conversion really meant then was more of just a commitment, to the sense of peoplehood and to the values.
Yeah.
So conversion then meant, was done differently than after the Torah was given. I want to get into
Rivka and Leah didn't convert either, and they came from, they weren't Jewish by birth.
Aramean.
Right. So conversion worked very differently then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rabbi, just one thing
Thanks,
about
Maria, for the interesting question.
Yeah. Rabbi, can I make a comment about the difference between the Bikurim and the Maaser is actually very great, because the Bikurim is brought to Jerusalem once a year. The Maaser is done only on the third year. The Bikurim is given to the Kohen, but the Maaser is not given to the Kohen, only to the Levites, the widows, the Ger, and the Atom. The Levites, the orphans, and the aliens. There's no mention that the Maaser is given to a Kohen. That's the big difference. The Bikurim is done for the Kohen only, and the Maaser is on the third year, and it's done for the Levites and the other people.
So actually, the Maaser Rishon that was given to the Levi was given each year.
But if you look at this verse, the Kohen is not mentioned.
Right, but the Maaser Rishon you give to the Kohen and the Levi each year. The Maaser Rishon was given each year, and then the other Maaser was either Maaser Sheni in some years and Maaser Ani in other years. But that's a good point, Ron. That the Bikurim is to the Kohen, Maaser is to the Levi or to the poor, but Maaser was indeed given each year. There's an interesting pasuk. There's so much to talk about in the Parsha, but the Parsha also speaks about there's a concept of taking the knives off the table at the end of the meal. The Shulchan Aruch actually says that a person should remove the knives off the table for Birchat Hamazon. And indeed, you know those challah boards where the knife goes into the slot? That's based on this Jewish concept, this custom of, at the time of the blessing, you shouldn't have the knife exposed. So of course you have to take out the knife to cut the challah, but you keep the knife inside the inside the challah board. You're not obligated to do that, but there's that concept of keeping the knife in the challah board. And certainly at the end of the meal, when you're saying Birchat Hamazon, so there is a concept in the Shulchan Aruch that you're supposed to remove the knives off the table. Now, many of you who, when you serve meals, and especially if you're entertaining guests, right, you might take off the knives anyway from the table with the main dish. And the Aruch HaShulchan says that we're not so careful about this nowadays. A lot of people take it off anyway, and you don't really have to take it off. But the Shulchan Aruch does talk about it. What's the reason why you need to take off the knives?
Shulchan is the mizbeach.
Very good. So the Shulchan is the Mizbeach. Nowadays we don't have an altar. The closest thing that we have that resembles the altar is our table in our homes. We don't have the Beit HaMikdash, we don't have the temple, but we have the Beit HaKnesset, and we have our home. Our home is supposed to be in a certain sense, I don't want to get you all nervous, in a certain sense, supposed to be like the Beit HaMikdash. But the table at the time of blessing is similar to the Mizbeach, is similar to the altar. And that's why at the Shabbat table, of course, you have kosher food, and you're kind to one another, and you have to say a Dvar Torah, and you should be careful. You should be careful about how you speak about other people. You should be careful about avoiding Lashon Hara at the Shabbat table, because the table at the time of blessing, perhaps on Shabbat, perhaps also even during the week, the table is like the altar. And the Pasuk says in our Parsha, Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Hey, that you should build an altar of stones. Lo tanif alehem barzel. You should not raise iron upon them. You should not use iron implements, a sword or a knife, a cutting instrument to shape the mizbeach, to shape the altar. And the reason the rabbis give is because iron and weapons and cutting instruments are sometimes used to shorten a person's life. Not always, but they're used for protection. They're used to cut a piece of meat. Okay, but they're often sometimes iron instruments are used to harm somebody and used to shorten another person's life. And the altar is used to provide atonement and is there to extend a person's life. And that's the reason why you're not supposed to use iron to shape the altar. So the minig this is one reason as to why we're supposed to take the knives off the table at Birchat Hamazon. Why? Because at the time of Birchat Hamazon, our table is like an altar. And just like the altar is not supposed to have iron implements, so too, our table at the time of blessing is not supposed to have iron implements. Why? Because iron shortens life, and our table, if we approach it in the right way, and of course, if you eat food, it extends your life, but if you eat healthy food, even better, and we believe that it serves as a source of connection to Hashem.
On the other hand, a scalpel extends life.
Nice. A scalpel extends life. Very good. Very good. That teaches us that with everything, you could use it for a productive purpose. But there's a second explanation. The second explanation as to why you take the knives off the table, listen to this, is because it once happened that a Jew was benching. This is hundreds of years ago. And the Beit Yosef quotes this reason. That the reason why we take the knives off the table at benching is why? Because it once happened that a Jew was up to V'nei Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. God, rebuild Yerushalayim b'mheira v'yameinu, speedily in our days. And the person benching said that so sincerely and was so passionate about that he took the knife on the table and he stabbed himself with the knife. And so, because of that incident, that's another reason given as to why, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to take the knives off the table at the time of Birchat Hamazon. And the question you could ask is, that really wasn't proper what that person did. We're not supposed to get out of control like that and take a knife and stab ourselves. And are we really concerned? Are we really concerned, with that? And the answer is that perhaps, I once heard this from my teacher, Rabbi J.J. Schachter, which is, again, there's two reasons. One reason we take off the knives is because it's like an altar. But the second reason we take it off is because of this incident. Maybe because we want to memorialize. Of course, a person shouldn't do that. But there's something admirable. There's something special about a Jew who cares so much about Yerushalayim and is so passionate that he's willing to do something like that. That we want to memorialize the passion of that Jew, even though it was misguided and he shouldn't have done it. We want to memorialize that, and that's why we have this custom to take off the knives of the table. And that's something for us to think about, which is, I think that's one of the problems in the modern Orthodox community. I believe we have a wonderful community, and each of you is righteous, and each of you is a great Jew, and I look up to you, and I think that it's amazing your ability to be committed to tradition, but also committed to the world. And I think the members of our community are phenomenal Jews. But I think one of the shortcomings of the modern Orthodox community, perhaps, is that we don't cry during the Eilah. Perhaps we're not passionate enough in our prayer, in our learning, in the things that we do. And Rabbi Norman Lamb once said that when we talk about modern Orthodox, that we can't be moderately passionate. We have to be, however, passionately moderate. We want to be moderate, right? We want to be moderates, whatever being moderate means, right? The Rambam talks about taking the middle road, that you should take the median route with all character traits, right? Okay, what's the middle, what's the median route? That's a whole other shiur. But taking the median route and being a moderate doesn't mean being pariv. No, we don't want to be pariv. We want to be passionate, and you have to be passionately moderate, and as opposed to moderately passionate. I think I remember hearing from Rabbi J.J. Schachter's father, who is Rabbi Herschel Schachter, who is the chaplain of the U.S. Army that liberated Buchenwald. And I think he told over some story, I'm trying to remember it now, it just comes to mind, where they came to him and they said, why is it that I think it was when communism was sweeping and many Jews were being influenced by the communist movement. And they asked the Rebbe, they said, well, but they're like, it's falsehood and it's denying God, and like, why are they having so much success? And the rabbi said, I'll tell you why, because yes, it's falsehood, but they pursue that falsehood with a sense of passion and sincerity. We have the truth, but we sometimes pursue that truth with a sense of insincerity and falsehood. So they have falsehood, but they pursue the falsehood with truth. We have truth, but we pursue it with falsehood. And what we need to do on Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah, all year round, is to tzedek tirdof, righteousness. We should pursue the truth with that, and that pursuit should be sincerely and passionately. And so maybe that's why we take the knives off the table at Birchat Hamazon, because we want to memorialize the passion of that Jew. And of course we don't want to emulate him completely, of course, goes without saying, but we want to incorporate that sense of passion, of sincerity, of engaging with the fullness of our being, as we started this year with, in everything that we do. And don't be looking over your shoulder when you're davening, right? I think people are nervous that if they cry during davening, right, the person next to them is going to think that they're strange. And no, put your full heart and soul in your prayers and in everything that you do. Yeah, Ron.